Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, despite the threat of violence, we meet those determined to protest for women's rights as the Taliban consolidates its control of the country. Also, the Mexican Supreme Court rules that criminalisation of abortion is unconstitutional, paving the way for legalisation. And the activists in Togo who are fighting against online harassment of women. This is some 45% of women in West Africa are said to be victims of cyberbullying. But we begin in Afghanistan, where nearly 2 months on after the takeover by the Taliban, the plight of women and girls continues to deteriorate. Most women are still banned from going to work, older girls are still not back at school, and the Women's Ministry has been closed and replaced by the Ministry of Vice and Virtue. Our colleagues from FOSDER went to meet those still determined to resist in whatever way possible.
This may simply look like a bride-to-be getting ready for her big day. But in Afghanistan, this is now an act of resistance. Behind closed shutters, this beauty salon owner continues to welcome customers, despite the Taliban ordering the closure of parlours.
The Taliban don't accept our work. They claim that makeup isn't compatible with Sharia law, that our work is dirty. I am taking risks by doing this, but I take full responsibility.
The Ministry for the Promotion of Virtue and Prevention of Vice is now the symbol of life under the Taliban in Kabul. It's impossible to meet with a ministry representative. Eager to gain international recognition, the Taliban want to portray a moderate image, though the attack on women's rights is plain to see. These women were forcibly stopped from protesting by the Taliban. Watching images of the incident brings them to tears.
We were scared, but we had to fight. We managed to protest only for a minute before the Taliban broke us up. We wanted to continue, but we couldn't.
This professor also took part in the demonstration to protest against the ban on women working, a fundamental right she says she is willing to risk her life to defend.
When I leave the house, I don't know if I'll come back alive. But if I do die, at least I will have defended my sisters. That's my purpose now.
Kabul isn't openly revolting against Taliban rule, though small acts of resistance are multiplying, such as what women are choosing to wear. Colourful headscarves can be seen in the streets of the Afghan capital, a huge contrast to the black burqas the Taliban want women to wear. For now, Taliban members patrolling the streets are turning a blind eye. Some men have joined the fight to defend women's rights. This head teacher is refusing to send his female pupils home. Aged between 12 and 18, they're banned from secondary school education, according to recent announcements from the Taliban.
We've accepted some of the Taliban's conditions. For example, we've separated the boys and girls. We accepted that, but we refuse to send the girls home. They have to study.
These girls are hungry to learn. And like their head teacher, they're determined to fight.
We're not going to be pushed around. We're going to study. We have exactly the same rights as men.
An old missile is now used as a school bell to call pupils into classes. A trace of the war, which has inspired many girls to become doctors or pilots.
If I become a pilot, I will fight to defend our rights and protect our country.
We're not against their education, but there's not enough security to allow them to go to lessons.
An argument which these Afghan women don't think is valid. The Taliban has also banned women from practicing sport, but they continue to train behind closed doors.
And thousands have protested in Mexico City against a Supreme Court ruling paving the way for abortion to be decriminalised, the decision opening the way for women across the nation to access the procedure without fear of prosecution. However, advances in the struggle for women's rights have generated divisions in the Catholic majority country, as Emerald Maxwell reports.
The 38 weeks pregnant 15-year-old seen here on the left has just had an ultrasound in front of thousands of anti-abortion activists.
On the 22nd day, the heart starts beating.
Some 10,000 protesters were gathered in Mexico City on Sunday from all over the country, most of them devout Catholics. In some Mexican states, abortion is considered murder, and women face up to 3 years in prison. But last month, the Supreme Court ruled that this criminalisation of abortion was unconstitutional, a decision that now paves the way for its legalisation throughout the country.
What the government have done worries us. To give a right to abortion is to give a right to kill. And that is not what the majority of Mexicans want.
Just 4 of 32 Mexican states currently allow abortion, and that's up to 12 weeks of pregnancy. Elsewhere in the country, termination is only allowed in cases of rape, risks to the life of the mother, or birth defects. But in practice, the law isn't always applied. Some doctors refuse to carry out the procedure.
No one should be able to tell us what to do with our bodies. We haven't had this freedom, nor have our mothers and grandmothers, and future generations must live without this taboo.
Shortly after the Supreme Court's decision, the Mexican government said that those jailed for having allegedly terminated their pregnancy would be freed.
Now, during the pandemic, cases of online harassment rose markedly across the world, and the African continent is no exception. Some 45% of women in West Africa are estimated to be victims of cyberbullying. Our team on the ground in Togo sent us this report.
This 26-year-old was harassed on social media. Anne-Marie says an editor took advantage of her promising to publish her first book. Their relationship quickly deteriorated.
He started by making sexist remarks, mocking comments. He made fun of my physical appearance, things that were meant to bring me down, until the day I exploded.
There are few official figures on online harassment, but according to a study conducted by Internet Without Borders shortly before the pandemic, 45% of West African women active online have been victims of sexist cyberbullying.
Before the pandemic, there were many cases, but it was not as pronounced as that.
Lockdowns and the restrictions on movement brought in by the pandemic have seen the use of social networks in Togo increase by more than 50%. Matrimoniate gives support to survivors of cyber violence.
We've had to deal with cases of identity theft, cases of physical assault. It always starts on social media. The consequences are always excruciating around us.
Insults, threats and intimidation. Grace was humiliated after she posted online comments defending victims of rape and teenage pregnancy. She also spoke out against those who believe African women should be submissive.
I was traumatized because the people were not just attacking me. They also wanted to attack my family. I never imagined that I could feel unsafe on the internet.
None of these victims filed a complaint because online harassment is not sanctioned in Togo.
There is a legal vacuum in Togo. The national institutions are struggling to keep up with the evolution of things.
There is no provision in the penal code regarding cybercrime. In Togo, the law only covers harassment and invasion of privacy.
Staying in Africa, and as the world observes Breast Cancer Awareness Month, known as Pink October, the disease is the second biggest killer of women in the sub-Saharan region. A recent study having suggested that at least a third of deaths could be avoided, as Selena Sykes reports.
It's the second biggest killer of women in sub-Saharan Africa. While breast cancer has a lower incidence rate in the region compared to Europe and North Africa, women who do develop it are less likely to survive.
Despite the lower incidence of breast cancer in low to middle income countries, the women who develop breast cancer in these regions tend to have much poorer survival. We don't fully understand the causes of this. It's likely to reflect access to healthcare in some countries. Much of the research which has been conducted to date has been focused on women in high-income countries, and there's been a lack of research on the causes of breast cancer in low to middle-income countries.
Between 85 and 90% of women diagnosed with breast cancer in high-income countries survive for at least 5 years. 5-year survival rates range from less than 20% in Mali and the Gambia to between 35 and 50% in Uganda, though there is a lack of research in the region. According to a study published last year in The Lancet Global Health, 416,000 deaths from breast cancer are projected in sub-Saharan Africa over the next decade. Researchers say at least a third of them could be prevented through earlier diagnosis and improvements in access to treatment. The study follows more than 2,000 women who were newly diagnosed with breast cancer in Namibia, Nigeria, South Africa, Uganda and Zambia. Half of these women had died 3 years after diagnosis.
And that's it for now. You can also connect with us via our Facebook page. That's France24.51%, or do send us a tweet at _51%. So until our next show, bye for now.